Welcome to JenPenCreations. I'm Jen. Today I want to go back to talking about having faith in something, anything. And as you may know if you've seen my other videos, I choose to believe in the mythology of Christianity. I also believe that religion equals mythology. It is the same thing. I've done a whole video on it, and if you haven't seen it, you should probably go watch it because it's really good. But I'm not talking about that today. I am going back to having faith. I'm going to tell you the stories about why I have the faith that I have. So stay with me and we'll get right to it. My daughter and I were having a conversation a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, about a memory that she had. It was a very, very faint memory in her mind of being a very small child and in the backseat of a car, stranded on the side of the road in the snow. And we'll get to that story, but as I was talking to her, I was letting her know that that was just one of those things that happened in our lives that caused my extreme faith in God. I want to start when I was 11. I do believe I was 11 years old when this happened. It was one of the first times I literally saw my life flash before my eyes, and I should have died. I feel like I should have died, and I was saved by God, the grace of God that night, actually. It was a night in, I do believe, October. I know it was at the beginning of the school year, so it was like somewhere around September, October time, and me and my friends were spending the night at my best friend's house. There were like 4 or 5 of us. We were having a sleepover. Her mom worked the third shift, and so she wasn't home at night. And we decided that we were going to do our hair, and of course, at that time in my life, we were teasing our hair and putting all kinds of hairspray and gel and mousse and hair products all over in our hair. And we made our hair stand straight out. It was super awesome. It was so much fun. We had a great time that night. We also decided that instead of having the big light on while we were going to sleep, we were going to light an oil lamp. Now, I have had numerous experiences with oil lamps up until that time because of having oil lamps at my own home and our electricity going off all the time. We used oil lamps a lot, and I knew how to use an oil lamp and be responsible with one. However, not everybody there did, and I ended up falling asleep before several other people, and the last person who was awake was supposed to blow out the lamp. Well, that person did not know how to turn off the lamp. They didn't know that you had to just blow it out. Blow it out. No. They took that wick in that oil lamp and they just turned it down all the way, and the fire was still there, just turned down into the lamp. Sometime in the middle of the night, that lamp got knocked over. And I'm pretty sure it happened by one of us, me or one of my friends, knocking it over, moving around, whatever, in the middle of the night. Now, I don't know how, and I don't know why, but I woke up. That fire was so close to my face, it burned off my eyebrows and my eyelashes. And the hair on my arm, gone. I was terrified. I woke up to this big fire right in front of my face, and it was right in front of the doorway. We were all sleeping on mattresses on the floor, and the lamp was right in front of the mattress that I was sleeping on with one of my friends, and it was one of us who knocked it over and started this fire right in front of the door. Now, if you know anything about an oil lamp, it was a grease fire. It was an oil fire. It was like kerosene oil or lamp oil or something in it. It was a flammable oil that was inside that lamp. So the oil got knocked over, the fire started, it was all over right in front of the door for us to get out of the bedroom. We couldn't get out. I screamed and woke up all my friends, and one of my friends started beating it with a pillow, and I was screaming at her, no, 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 and the fire just went whoosh and got super, super huge and in front of the door. And now none of us could even jump over the fire to get downstairs. We were stuck in an upstairs bedroom with a roaring fire. The radio was turned on. The TV was still plugged in. The mattresses were still on the floor. We were all in our pajamas, and it was terrifying. The only way we could go was out the window. And the windows, there were 2 windows with a big entertainment center between them. And we were opening the windows and climbing out onto the roof of the kitchen. Okay, so the kitchen kind of stuck out the back of the house, and we were climbing out the windows onto that roof. Okay, that was so scary. I don't recall a whole lot that happened after we got out onto the roof and tried to get help from the neighbor. All she did was turn her light on, and I saw her looking out the window, and I'm waving at her. Miss Nancy, please, please, call the cops, look, there's a fire. And I'm pointing at the windows, and she looks over at the windows, and she sees the fire. The flames are coming out the windows, like shooting out the windows, probably 5 feet. And I watched her turn around, shut her light off, and go back to bed. That was so terrifying for me. Now, I understand that I was 11 at the time, and me and my friends, we listened to loud music, and we were silly, and we did stupid stuff in the backyard, and we bothered her, okay? She was an older lady, and she just didn't like the music we listened to, and she didn't like the fact that we were loud teenagers, I wasn't even a teenager, I was like 11. So we were just loud kids, pre-teens, whatever. And so she didn't care that the house was on fire, and she went back to bed. And after that moment, I kind of just zoned out because I was terrified. I didn't think we were going to get rescued. So I sat myself down on the edge of the roof and just sat there and swayed back and forth, staring into space, not knowing what was happening. And I do recall people. I remember seeing people, like the other neighbors who lived behind my friend. Not the lady who lived next door, because she didn't give a flying crap about us. It was the neighbors who lived behind my friend who actually woke up and called 911 and came running outside trying to help us get off the roof. And I remember them yelling at me. Everybody was yelling at me because I could hear pops and stuff from the fire behind me. And everybody was screaming at me to move, you have to move. And I just didn't know what to do. And my friend came up behind me. She was still on the roof with me. There were 4 of us on the roof. And she came up behind me and grabbed me and started heaving me. And I remember snapping out of it and just getting up and running. And at the moment that I stood up and ran out of the way, the stereo that was still plugged in the house exploded out that window. Flames, probably 10 feet, came flying out that window right where I was sitting. By the time I got moved, and I just realized my life flashed before my eyes, and I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. I also had a broken finger at the time. I broke my finger in PE class playing flag football. Weird. But I had a whole, cast thing over this whole side of my hand and up to my wrist. So I couldn't move my hand or my arm or my wrist or anything. And when the firefighters got there, they wanted me to climb down a tree. And I'm like, I can't. And I remember grabbing a hold of the tree, and then I don't remember anything until I woke up on the couch at the neighbor's house. I passed out coming down the tree. The firefighters told me that they had to carry me into the house and put me on the couch. I finally came to, and I was kind of out of it, but because I was the first one awake in the bedroom, I had to sit at the table and draw the whole layout of that bedroom and where the fire started and what happened. And it was so scary. But I'm going to tell you, that night, one of my friends, one of the girls who was at the sleepover, her mom came. She lived right down the street from me, and her mom came and picked up me, one of our other friends, and her, and took her home and took me and my other friend to my house so she could spend the rest of the night with me. And that night, I was so tired, but I really couldn't sleep. And I was kind of half in and out of sleep. And you have to remember, I was 11 years old. At that time, I didn't really, my mom had told me about God. I was raised in a Catholic family. I knew who God was and I knew who Jesus was, and I was trying to believe in them, but I didn't really know. I didn't know them. I knew who they were. It's like I know who Johnny Depp is, but I don't know Johnny Depp. He's a celebrity, and I don't know him. That's how I felt about God. God and Jesus and angels and all heaven and all that stuff. That was all part of celebrityism, and I knew of it, but I didn't know it. And in my head, that's how I felt. But that night, I was half in and out of sleep. I was having bad dreams, and I remember waking up from one of those dreams and looking over at the corner of my bed, and there was somebody sitting there just watching me and my friend as we were sleeping. And I looked at him and I said, "Who are you?" I distinctly remember saying, "Who are you?" And he didn't say a word, but I could hear him in my head, and he said, "You know who I am. Go back to sleep. You're okay. Everything's gonna be fine. You're not gonna die tonight." And I went back to sleep. I distinctly remember believing that was my guardian angel. I don't think that our family members who die in our lifetime come back to be our guardian angels. I think that's just stupid to think, because there's no way that they can. It's got to be somebody else, somebody who's either been dead for a long time or somebody who's never been here and they've just been an angel for God their entire existence. I am not a believer in, my grandma coming back and being my guardian angel. Then who was my guardian angel when I was first born, when my grandma was still alive? How can you even think that? I don't know. But that is the first time in my life that I experienced God. I feel like I experienced God in that moment. So moving on to my daughter and her faint memory. So like I said, her memory was of her being in a car, in the backseat of a car, stranded on the side of the road in the snow when she was 2 and her little sister was only a few months old, about 6 months old. It was Christmas time, and I had driven them to a mall in another city in the state that I was living in the Midwest. And because they had the best Santa Claus. He had a real beard, and he was so sweet, and he just was super awesome and took the best pictures with these kids. And I wanted to go and get my kids' pictures taken with this awesome Santa Claus. So I drove to a whole nother city, to another place that was quite far away from where I lived, to go and get these awesome Christmas pictures. Now, it was nighttime because, of course, it was wintertime, and as you know, in the wintertime, it gets dark at 4, 5, 6. It's totally dark by then. And we are coming home from the mall that we got our pictures taken with Santa Claus at, and it's dark. It's probably about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, maybe 9, and my car died. Now, I'm on a freeway in between cities. Now, if you know anything about the Midwest, any state in the Midwest, the freeway between cities is empty. There's nothing out there but cornfields, soybean fields, pumpkin fields, just fields and nothing. And at that late at night, in December, like maybe a week before Christmas, there was nobody out there. I was terrified, sitting on the side of the road with 2 babies, crying in the front seat of my car. I didn't know what I was going to do. My car broke down and I didn't know anything about my car. I didn't know anything about cars. I'm crying, and my oldest daughter, who actually had this memory, this was her memory, she is sitting in the back seat and asks me why I'm crying. And that just hurts so bad. You know, when your kid sees you crying and knows, it hurts. So I told her, we are broke down and I don't know how we're going to get home, but we're going to figure it out. And just then I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw a vehicle pull up behind me, probably about 50 to 100 feet behind me. At that moment, I had no idea who they were or why they had stopped and why they had stopped so far behind me. If they were here to help me, I didn't think that they were there to help me, or else they would have been closer to me. I had no idea why they were there, but I needed help. At that time, it was Christmas of 2001. Christmas of '01. That's what it was. Christmas of 2001. I did not have a cell phone. I was a single mom, 20 years old, with 2 babies, stranded on the side of the freeway. So I walked back there. I told my daughter in the car, I said, Mommy's going to be right back. I'm going to go see if I can get us some help. You watch your sister and be very good, and Mommy's going to close and lock the door. I'll be right back. So I closed the door and I walked into the blizzard. I get back there. I get about maybe 5 feet away from it, and I could finally see what it was. A church van stopped on the side of the road. And I stopped and talked to the driver of the church van, and he had told me that they were a church from the east. I don't remember which state they were from, somewhere out east. And they were in town for some Christmas revival something. I can't remember what it was for. Convention or something. And they rented a van that didn't have a spare. And they got a flat tire right behind me on the freeway. Was that God or what? By the time I had gotten up the courage to go back there and talk to them, I saw that there was already a police officer there, and the guy, the pastor who told me where they were from and why they were broke down, told me, you need to go talk to him. Go talk to him. He needs to help you before he helps us. And I went back to talk to the police officer, and he was super kind and super sweet, and I am so thankful to God, whatever divine being was out there sending these people my way that night. I understand that it was probably a pretty pain in the butt experience for the church group to have a flat tire in a state that they weren't from, in a vehicle they rented with no spare, but I'm positive God did that for my benefit, because I did not need to be stranded on the side of the road with 2 babies. And the cop helped me, called a tow truck, towed my car back to my apartment. My insurance covered it. I didn't even know that it would. I was astounded by everything that happened in that moment. And now I had at least 2 experiences under my belt where God directly intervened in my life to save me. And how can you just nonchalantly just think that coincidences? I mean, what kind of coincidence is that? I don't know. But that really hit me hard. I was super crying that night. That one hit me hard. It was terrifying being a 20-year-old mom with 2 babies stranded in a blizzard on the side of a dead freeway. I just am thankful to God every day that He sent that church group there. Now, I know that there were many other stories that have happened in my life where God has intervened and saved me or helped me out in some way. But these are the ones that really have sealed the deal between me and God. About 20 years ago, I moved out of the Midwest and moved into the mountains. I lived in Denver for a time, and during that time, I decided that I needed to find God, because I was lost. I mean, I guess I didn't need to find God. He's never been lost. God needed to find me, but he always knew where to find me. He just was waiting on me to find myself, I guess. Lead myself out of the darkness and into some light. So I started going to a church in Denver, and the pastor there was just phenomenal. He was amazing. He is no longer the pastor of that church. However, I am still in contact with him. I find his words of wisdom to be fantastic and amazing. But at this time in my life, he was still the pastor of the church in Denver, and I am so thankful for finding them. I really, really enjoyed going to church at that point because I had moved 1,000 miles away from my hometown, my friends, my family, anybody really that I knew other than my other side of family that lived up here in the mountains. And they lived in a different city that was about 80 to 100 miles away from Denver. So I really didn't spend a whole lot of time with that family. And I was trying to meet people and make friends and try to introduce myself to a community that I knew nothing about. So I was going to church a whole lot. And at the time, I was living with my father and my stepmother. My father had a big issue with me going to church that much because the church was quite a ways away in another suburb of Denver on the opposite side of where we lived in the suburb of Denver that we lived in. And it took a while to get there and to get back. Like I had to take three or four freeways to get there. And I didn't mind. I went to church 5 times a week. I enjoyed the people there. I enjoyed the pastor. I enjoyed every second I spent there. I made friends there. I just loved it so much. Now, let's get into what actually happened. This church, every so often, would have revival. And revival happened when like a big pastor from the corporate part of the church would come from another state and come and preach at our church. Or sometimes they would come and preach at one of the churches around us. Like sometimes they would preach at a church like 100 miles south of us or 100 miles north of us. At this time, the revival was happening at our church. I was so excited. That meant church every night of the week, and I could get something from God every night. My biggest problem, I had no gas in my car. At the time, I was trying to figure out how I was going to make my life work. I had just moved from a military base in California back to Colorado. My first husband cheated on me with lots and lots and lots of women while he was overseas, and when he came back, he was cheating on me with more women at the base that we were living on. I had finally gotten away from him, gotten out of that abusive relationship, and was trying to make it on my own, trying to get a job, trying to make money, and I had a piece of crap car that had no gas in it. I had just enough gas to get to church one night. I could get there, but I wasn't gonna make it home. Like I said, that church was kind of far away. But I didn't care. God laid it on my heart. He told me I needed to go. There was something I needed to get from church that night. I was scared. I was scared to go because I didn't know how I was gonna make it home. And my car was the biggest piece of shit. I mean, it didn't even have a stereo in it. Me and my kids would sing church songs and kids songs all the way anywhere we were going. And so that's what I did. I kept them occupied with church songs. I didn't tell them that we were running out of gas. I didn't put that burden on my kids. My kids didn't need to know that. I had that burden on me. It was all on me. Believe me, I felt it. I was terrified I wasn't going to make it home that night. But I kept driving and we kept singing and we made it to church. And when I pulled into the church, I had no gas. My gas light was on, and it had been on since I got off the freeway. And so I pulled into the church parking lot, parked my car, and just prayed for the best. And I decided I wasn't going to burden anybody with my issues of not having money. I didn't think that that was anybody else's burden but mine. And I could pray to God about it. And I could go to the altar and pray to God about it. And that's exactly what I did. During altar call, I was at the altar just crying to God to please help me get home. And I was just in my head, okay? I don't really pray out loud unless I'm by myself. So when it was altar call, you don't want to go up there going, "Ah!" Okay, you don't want to be the person making all kinds of noise and ruckus and making a scene in church. So that's not what I was. I was up there with my hands down. I was crying. I was praying to God with all of my might to please help me get home that night. And I had every faith in him. I didn't know how. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought maybe that he would just let my car make it home on the no gas it had. Like, I didn't know how he was going to do it. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just had some faith and hoped, prayed for the best. So the end of service comes, and I go downstairs to pick up the children. I grab my kids, and we start saying goodbye to everybody and heading out the door. And all of a sudden, one of the other church members comes running after me. Jenny, wait, Pastor wants to say goodbye to you. And I'm like, okay, I'll wait. Usually he was standing at the door, shaking everybody's hand as they walked out the door. Like he always was when you came in. He was always there to shake your hand and come into the door. Okay? He was not at the door that day. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but I was just going to go because it was time to leave. And the other church patron, he comes running down the stairs. Don't leave, Pastor wants to say goodbye to you. Okay, cool. I'll hang out for a minute and wait for Pastor. Say goodbye. So Pastor comes running out of the sanctuary and down the stairs through a bunch of people. There were people everywhere. He comes running down these stairs with his hand outstretched. Jenny! And I run over there. I just kind of walk over there. I reach up and I grab his hand and I shake his hand. And in his hand, he's handing me $25. And he looked me straight in my face and he said, I don't have a clue what you need this for, but God told me you need this. And I looked at him and I said, thank you so much. And he said, God bless you. And I walked out that door, and I got in my car, and I just started crying. I wasn't sad, just like, not now. I was overwhelmed with just amazingness. I could not believe. I did not tell a single soul that night. I did not tell anybody that night that I needed gas money. And that was the first night of revival. There were lots of people there, because a lot more than usual, because usually when one of the churches has revival, a lot of the patrons from other churches around will come up to that church for revival. There were numerous times we drove to Cheyenne for revival. We would drive down to Colorado Springs for revival, or we would drive to different places for revival, but everybody had driven to Denver for revival that night, that week, actually. So there were so many people around, and I just didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody about my personal money problems. So that wasn't happening. And I just could not believe that Pastor gave me that money. So I go to the gas pump. It cost me $20 to fill up my gas tank. Fill it up completely so that I can get to and from church for the next week. I drove a tiny little car, just saying. It was a tiny little piece of shit, but it was a tiny little car, and my 4 kids barely fit into it. But it worked for us. That's all I needed. It was just the 5 of us. So as long as there were 3 of them in the back seat and 1 in the front, we all fit. And we were good. And everybody was in a car seat. But it only took me $20 to fill up my gas tank that night. He had given me $25. And I remembered when he preached about our finances. Not long before this revival, it was probably maybe a month or so before the revival, that he had preached about our finances and told us that that God sees you. God sees you. He knows your needs. God is Jehovah Jireh, my God, my provider. He will provide for you. If your bills are this big, he will provide this much. He will always give you just the amount of money that you need. And that night he gave me $25. $20 filled up my gas tank. I drove back to Revival the next night and put that extra $5 in the basket to go back to the church. And that was one of the most impactful moments of my life where God came out of nowhere and saved me. I think we all have moments like that. I'm sorry for the emotions, but when that kind of stuff happens, it hits. And it hits hard. I've had numerous other things happen in my life since then that I know were God. That just reinforces my faith in God. I do understand that religion is just mythology. It is something that not everybody believes in. And honestly, I really don't like the word religion because that's like organized dogmatic bullshit. I like to use the word spirituality. I have a spirit, and my spirit knows God, and God helps me out in this world. God has been helping me out since I was a child. And I'm pretty positive even that day when I was 3 years old, riding my big wheel out front, and there were 2 Dobermans that jumped the fence across the street and chased me down the street with fangs and slobber and growling, and it was terrifying, and I was 3 and riding a big wheel. I'm pretty sure that day God saved me too. Do you have stories like that? I'd like to hear about them. Honestly, I think that they're fascinating and amazing. Just things that just happen. Miracles that happen out of nowhere that probably shouldn't have happened to us but did. Let me know about that. I want to hear about it. Tell me about it in the comments. I love personal stories about stuff like that. I have a lot of my own. And actually, that's a reason why I created this channel, is to be able to talk about my experiences, my life, and my thoughts and my beliefs, and the life lessons I've learned here. I truly believe that there is a God out there who loves us and wants the best for us. I have experienced his love and generosity over and over and over again in my life. Hopefully you have too. I'm pretty sure most of us have. Whether you believe it's God or the divine creator or something else. Even if you believe it was your own manifestation, that's cool, right? Like, you managed to manifest saving yourself in this world. That is amazing. I find that fascinating. Tell me about it. I hope you have a wonderful day. Go do something amazing for somebody else. Be that love spark in somebody else's life. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.